Hello class, we're about to start section 12.5 part 1, solving rational equations. We have how to solve a rational equation. When the equation contains algebraic fractions, the easiest way to solve it is by clearing fractions, which means multiplying both sides of the equation by the LCD. Note, you must check that the solutions are in the domain of the original expressions. So what this means is this here. After you get your final answer, you have to check and make sure that your final answer does not make the denominator of the original equation equal 0. Any denominator of the original equation, if your answer makes the denominator equal 0, then you do not use that answer. Does everyone follow that? Okay, so now we want to clear these denominators. So first, let me rewrite this. Now, let's look here at both of these fractions. If we were adding these fractions, we know our common denominator would be 3 times x minus 5, right? Because we will be trying to find that common denominator. But since we're trying to clear the fractions, we'll multiply everything by what the common denominator would be, which would be 3 times x minus 5. Now remember, you can only do this with an equation. You cannot do this with an expression. Now when you multiply, this is assumed to be over 1. So now, what would happen is this here. These 3's would simplify out, right? And that would leave you x minus 5. So we will have 2 times x minus 5, and that would take care of this first fraction, equals. Now this x minus 5 and this x minus 5 will simplify out, and that will leave you 3 times 7. And then now, there's nothing to simplify out the 3 and the x minus 5, so you would take 2 times 3 times x minus 5. Okay, now we'll multiply. We add 2x minus 10. This will give us 21. Now we know 2 times 3 here is 6. So we know we'll really be taking 6 times this fraction here. So 6 times x would be 6x, and 6 times a minus 5 would give us minus 30. Okay, now we will combine the like terms. We add 2x minus 10. Now, we will write our 6x. 21 minus 30 would give us a minus 9. Now, after doing all of this, now we can solve for x. So we can subtract 6x on both sides. And this would give us negative 4x minus 10 equals negative 9. Now, we will add 10 on both sides. And then we will have negative 4x is equal to 1. We divide each side by a negative 4. And x is a negative 1/4. Now we go back up to the top to our denominator. We notice here our denominator is x minus 5, correct? So the only thing that would make this denominator 0 is if 5 was replaced for x, correct? So that means that our final answer of x equals negative 1/4 is our final answer.
So we don't plug it back in?
If you did plug, only thing you're concerned with is this going to make the denominator equal 0?
Oh.
If it doesn't make it equal 0 and you did all the math right, then this would be your solution. Are there any questions? All right, now for those of you that like to check your answers, I'm going to do this here. I'm going to show you how you could check your answer using a calculator. So we know in order for this to be correct, we already know that our answer was a negative 1/4 previously. So if we substitute in negative 1/4 for x here, that means that this side must equal to this 2/3, correct? Okay, so now we would turn on our calculator, and then what we would do is this here. We would take 7 divided by the parenthesis. Now we know that this x is a negative 1/4, so we'll take negative 1 divided by 4, and then subtract 5, and then close our parenthesis, and then we will add 2, and press enter. Now if you notice here, we have these repeating 6's, and we know if we press math and enter twice, we will get 2/3, and that is what we started out with. Does everyone follow that? Okay, so we checked the problem and it worked out, so it's correct. Okay, now we come here to B. Same thing here. We look at all these denominators. What is the common denominator of 6, 2x, and 3? It'll be 6x. You have to include the variable. So we would take 6x and multiply it by this whole equation. Now we know this is assumed to be 6x over 1. So now these 6's will simplify out, and you add x times 2x, which will give us 2x. 2 goes into 6 3 times, and the x's will simplify out. And 3 times 1 we know is 3. 3 goes into 6 twice, so we add 2x and 1. 2x times 1, which will give us 2x. Does everyone follow how we got 2x plus 3 equals 2x? Okay, now we have to solve for x, so we need to get x by itself. So we'll subtract 2x on both sides, and we add 3 is equal to 0. We know 3 does not equal to 0. There's no variables left, so our final answer here would be no solution. Now we go on to the next page. Now it says here, find the x-intercept by hand of f of x is equal to x squared minus 1 over x plus 2 minus 3 over x plus 2. When they ask us to find the x-intercept, or x-intercepts, what does that mean for f of x? What would that mean for f of x? Yes, f of x will have to equal 0. Because remember, with x-intercepts, y equals 0, right? Doesn't f of x represent y? And since it does, that means that it'll be 0 is equal to this equation. So now what we need to do is we need to combine these fractions because they have the same denominator, which is x plus 2. And then we will have x squared minus 1 minus 3. And this will give us 0 is equal to x squared minus 4 all over x plus 2. Now before we go about getting rid of the x plus 2, this is what we need to do. We can factor this numerator. Isn't x squared minus 4 the difference of 2 squares? So we can factor that as x plus 2 times x minus 2. And that's all over x plus 2. The x plus 2 simplify out. And then you will have, I'm going to write that over here, 0 is equal to x minus 2. Because we know this will be over 1, so we don't have to write that since we have the x minus 2. Now we will add 2 to both sides. So 2 is equal to x. Now, since 2 is equal to x, first, before we write out our final answer, we will look here. We will look and see whether or not this 2 will make this denominator equal 0. It actually does not, because 2 plus 2 is 4. It does not make the denominator equal 0. So, what we will have here, our ordered pair for the x-intercept would be 2, 0. And we are done. Any questions?
So the ordered pair is our answer, right?
Right. The ordered pair is the final answer. So now we go to the next page. It says, caution, do not confuse the procedures used to simplify a rational expression with those used to solve a rational equation. Remember, an equation has an equal sign. So with this here, this does not have an equal sign, so we cannot get rid of the denominators here. So now we must find a common denominator, but before we do, we need to factor out. We need to factor these denominators. Now the first two are already factored. The first two terms are, their denominators are factored. Now, for the last term, x squared plus 2x minus 8, this factors to x plus 4 and x minus 2. Now we look here. We look at all of these denominators. We're trying to find a common denominator. If you notice, this last denominator has everything, the x plus 4 and x minus 2. So we come here. We know that we're going to have to multiply this first term by x plus 4 over x plus 4. And we'll put it in parentheses. Now we have to do the second term. We know we have to multiply this second term by x minus 2 over x minus 2. And then the last term, we don't have to multiply by anything because we already have everything. Okay, so now we can multiply. This will give us 2x plus 8 all over x plus 4 times x minus 2. And then here we will have x minus 2 over x plus 4 times x minus 2. Then finally we have minus x over x plus 4 times x minus 2. Now we look here. We have the same denominator, so we know our denominator is going to be x plus 4 times x minus 2. Now we will combine the like terms. We had 2x plus x minus x. That will give us 2x. 8 plus a negative 2 will give us positive 6. So our numerator is factored. Now, if we factor out a 2 from our numerator, that's only going to leave us x plus 3, which we cannot simplify out. So we can leave this as our final answer. Okay, now we go on to the next problem. Now with this next problem, you notice that it's basically the same as the previous problem we covered, except for this has an equal sign. And we need to get rid of these denominators. So since we already found the common denominator, we're going to multiply everything, this whole equation, by x plus 4 times x minus 2. So we will take the x plus 4 and the x minus 2, and we'll multiply by this equation. So now we multiply. We know that x minus 2 simplify out, so that will leave us 2 times x plus 4. The x plus 4 simplify out, and we know 1 times x minus 2 will give us x minus 2. And then we know that x plus 4 times x minus 2 is really x squared plus 2x minus 8. So these will simplify out and leave x. So now we multiply. We add 2x plus 8 plus x minus 2 is equal to x. Now we combine the like terms. We add 3x plus 6 equals x. We can subtract x on both sides. And 2x plus 6 equals 0. We'll subtract 6 on both sides. And 2x equals negative 6. Now we divide each side by 2. And x is negative 3. And x is negative 3 is our final answer, because if we substitute these values in, it will not make any of the denominators equal 0. So this is our final answer. And we are done.